Hey, Genesis 29 is continuing, and Jacob is fixing to meet his match. If you remember, Jacob has kind of been a trickster. You know, he's kind of a sly guy that can be very conniving to get his way. And he's fixing to meet his match in his uncle Laban, who's even better at it than he is. Throughout this section of Genesis, Jacob kind of gives a little eye for an eye. God uses Laban to, I think, teach Jacob a lot about life and about himself, and to really change Jacob as a person. So it's kind of like when God used the Babylonians to judge Israel, God's going to use Laban to judge Jacob and to change him. So let's look at some of these first encounters here in verse 15. It says, after Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, you shouldn't work for me without pay, but just because we are relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older daughter was named Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, I'll work for you for 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife. Agreed, Laban replied. I'd rather give her to you than to anyone else. Stay and work with me. So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Ah, young love. Isn't it great? So there's a couple things happening here that we miss if you don't kind of dig into the culture and the background and understand a little bit more. Was number one, Laban said to him in verse 15, you shouldn't work for me without pay just because we're relatives. Basically, he's telling him here, if you want to stay, you got to be a hired hand. That's what's happening. You're a hired boy now. You're a servant. Remember where Jacob had come from. He had come from wealth. His grandfather Abraham was wealthy. Isaac was even more wealthy than he was. And so here's Jacob. He had not been somebody that had been engaged in a lot of manual labor. That's what the hired hands did. That's not Jacob's job. Jacob oversaw things. Jacob, supervised. But here he is fixing to go to work. So Laban is not treating him as a relative here. On a sly way, he's getting another hired servant that he can tell him to do whatever. And Jacob sees these 2 daughters, and he loves Rachel. I mean, you understand, she's described there as having a beautiful figure, a lovely face. She was the first person that he saw from this family when he arrived. So there was already something there, and they had spent time together, and they had grown, closer. Jacob was fond of her. I think Jacob loved her not just for her looks, but for the person she was too. And so in all of this, he says, I'll work for you for 7 years for the hand of your younger daughter, Rachel. What he's doing is paying a dowry. That's all this is. It's a dowry. He was from a wealthy family but didn't have money. So he has to pay to get the wife. I mean, that's how it works. You paid a dowry to marry. And so he's basically saying, my dowry will be my labor for these 7 years. And 7 years is a long time for a dowry. But I think what he wanted was he didn't want to be turned down. And so he agrees, Laban does. He agrees. He said, I'd rather give her to you than to anyone else. Stay and work with me. So Jacob worked for 7 years. And things don't exactly turn out just like he would like. But that's a story for tomorrow. And come back tomorrow to see it.